What's up, guys? It's September 24th. I thought I'd make another little video going over one tip. It's not a new assignment. It's not even a thing you have to do, but it's just a thing you might check out. This is an article from a few years ago by Chuck Palahniuk. You might know that name. He wrote Fight Club and several other novels that are pretty good. You might check them out. But he had a column for a while going over like little tips and little exercises like, hey, for the next month, try this. It doesn't mean it's the best way to do things forever. It just means here's a thing to try. So what he said was, don't use verbs about thought, like when your character thinks or knows or understands or remembers or something like that. If we're just reading their mind, he says, well, instead, what if you describe the external observable effects? So, for example, Kenny wondered if Monica didn't like him going out at night. You might say that. Or, instead of summarizing it that way, you might say, the mornings after Kenny had stayed out beyond the last bus until he'd had to bum a ride or pay for a cab and got home to find Monica faking sleep. Faking because she never slept that quiet those mornings. She'd only put her own cup of coffee in the microwave, never his. That gives us a lot of spice. It gives us details and moments and images, and we know more, okay? We know what he's doing. He's staying out, and then he has to come back, and she's doing that like, hey, I'm pretending like I don't care, but that makes it even worse, and that makes it even more obvious that I do care thing, where it's like, oh, I'm pretending to sleep, but you know I wouldn't actually sleep like this, and I'm only giving myself coffee because I'm mad at you, but I'm not saying it. And we get a lot there, and we get a lot of the flavor of that. If this was a movie, we'd get stuff to put on the screen. Like we could imagine seeing him come home, seeing him notice that his coffee was not, set out. Whereas if you just say Kenny wondered, there's not a way that we would do that in a movie unless you just have the narrator say it, And throughout this article, which is pretty good, I'm going to recommend you read it, he mentions that instead of saying what's in their head, usually it's better to say how it got there and what they're noticing and what they're externally picking up from the world. It's just another classic angle of the show not tell idea that you've all heard, I'm sure. If there was a character who was really tall, you could just say Tom was tall. Or you could say Tom hit his head on the door when he came in. And that's a little more interesting because it gives us the fact, okay, unless he's going into like a hobbit house or something. We assume that he's tall. And then it also gives us the flavor because we see like, oh, this must be a problem for this character. He keeps hitting his head. He must be inconvenienced. He must feel like the world is not meant for him and he must feel awkward and blah, blah, blah. That has all kinds of stuff built in that, he was tall doesn't. Because if you say he was tall, well, maybe it's great. Maybe he's like feeling powerful and everything. And if you gave us a detail to say that, we'd get that. So I'm going to link this article or a Google Doc version of it. And I'm going to recommend you check it out. But this is not mandatory. This is not like you have to go through your story and delete all the verbs that say thought and remember and all of that. Sometimes you want to do it. Sometimes your narrator has a style that involves saying that stuff, and that's okay. However, once you see this and it's in your head and now you're looking for it, it will sort of activate new ideas in your mind every time you're looking at another sentence. By the way, next quarter when we write poems, sometimes I am going to say, hey, it's mandatory. Tell us some details. Tell us some images. Tell us some moments instead of just saying I know or I remember. That is also very applicable to poetry. So that's it for today. I just wanted to give one tip. I'm going to continue to look at people's drafts and get their peer editing going and all that stuff. We got today, a couple more days next week, and then we're done. So make sure you're on track for that final draft and all those things. Thanks.